Good evening and welcome to Metro Focus. I'm Jenna Flanagan. It's a local race that has attracted national attention. Tiffany Caban, a political newcomer backed by the progressive movement, has declared victory over Queensborough President Melinda Katz in the Democratic primary for Queens District Attorney. But Katz, who trails Caban by 1 percentage point with about 3,400 votes yet to be counted, is not ready to concede just yet.
You know, when we started this thing, they said I was too young. They said I didn't look like a district attorney. They said we could not build a movement from the grassroots. They said we could not win. But we did it, y'all.
I want everyone to know right here, we are doing a recount, and God willing, I'm
The hotly contested primary put criminal justice reform front and center and was widely seen as a referendum in the battle between the borough's insurgent progressive movement and the Queens Democratic Party machine. The winner of the primary is expected to become the borough's first new DA in over 30 years, replacing Richard Brown, who passed away earlier this year. So joining us now to break this all down and what it all means, as well as give us a preview of the first debate of the 2020 presidential race, is Ben Max and Jarrett Murphy, co-hosts of the Max and Murphy radio show on WBAI. Gentlemen, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so for the few New Yorkers who didn't have a primary, explain to us what was it that went down in Queens last night?
I mean, I would say this is a bit of a political earthquake. We obviously have to see the final ballots cast. Melinda Katz seems to be saying that she really wants to stick with this until we see what the affidavits and the absentees and the militaries yield. But it seems like there was a political earthquake in terms of this progressive movement really overtaking the county establishment and the labor unions that were with them. This was not a sort of progressives and labor unions together against the establishment. Labor was all with Katz, and so for the progressive movement to really bring out their voters, mostly in Western Queens, but also other parts of the borough, really shakes things up.
And there were progressives in the race besides Caban who did not do very well at all, one of whom dropped out late in the race. One thing I find fascinating is this is seen to some degree as the second chapter, the bookend to the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez phenomenon that broke out last year in the federal primaries in 2018. She received 12,000 votes in Queens in that primary. That district also has a Bronx end. Last night, Tiffany Caban got 36,000 or so votes, so roughly 3 times as many votes as Alexandria Cortez had. So now that's a borough-wide race, and it was a race with relatively low turnout, about 11%, which isn't bad for a primary these days, but is fairly low. But I think it indicates either that the AOC phenomenon is catching on and is getting bigger and bigger, or that, in fact, the phenomenon is much bigger than AOC, and Caban tapped into it.
I'll just say, in terms of criminal justice reform, more of the substance than the politics of it. This pretends to have huge ramifications in Queens, across the city and beyond, in terms of how crime is dealt with in New York and how communities are served, investments in communities, alternatives to prosecution, all sorts of things that Caban ran on that she seems to have a mandate now to carry out. No matter what the turnout was, if she's going to become the DA, she's going to look to follow through on those promises.
And so that's one of the things that I do want to clarify for viewers who might not understand is what were some of those more progressive policies that she was running on? What were the changes that she wanted to bring to the Queens DA's office?
Well, everyone in the race pretty much embraced some elements of the progressive criminal justice reform agenda. Where Caban was different was she talked about a total reorientation of the office to go essentially from an office whose job is to prosecute people to an office that's looking to rectify injustices much more broadly, to decarcerate as opposed to incarcerate, to try to correct societal injustices stemming from inadequate supply of resources, past wrongs of the criminal justice system, to use the efforts of the office to try to heal communities instead of to punish. It's a total reorientation of what being a DA means, not just from Dick Brown, who was there for many, many years and was a very kind of old school, tough on crime guy, but even from some of the other DAs that are reformers in the city, this is a very different approach.
Well, also, speaking of the former DA Brown being there for 30 years, if Caban wins, she would be, what, 31 coming into this office? That would be historical in and of itself. And, I mean, is it expected that she would be able to just stay until
We might be in a new era where because there's no term limits, people are challenged more in the primaries, no matter who is to win. You could see a more sort of moderate establishment candidate try to take her on in the future. If she wasn't going to be successful, you'd very likely see a sort of progressive in her model, even her, come back and try to win. So that's, I think, hard to tell. But once you're in, being an incumbent is very powerful, but we'll see how things go. I mean, as Jarrett said, she's talking about sort of a radical overhaul of the office. We also have to see how this general election plays out. I mean, we shouldn't get too far ahead of ourselves. We have ballots to count in the primary, general election. There's a nominal Republican who doesn't seem interested in campaigning. But given now that we had the primary in June and there's a bit of time till November, it might be interesting to see if someone like Judge Greg Lasik, who came in third in the primary, is approached about possibly running in the general election, maybe even bumping off the Republican on that line. We have to see what happens here. But if she does win the general election and Caban takes over, she could be there for a very, very long time.
One X factor, I think, is that she will be the elected district attorney and in charge of that office. It's a massive office, 300 lawyers, 300 civil servants. They obviously work a lot with the police department, which is its own entity, empire into itself. Caban has to turn her legal nominal control of that office into actual effective day-to-day policy. And that would be challenging for anybody with a change agenda. Hers being a particularly ambitious one, that's going to be even more challenging. So whether she can deliver on these promises, and of course whether crime remains low and the narrative that we can continue to pursue criminal justice reforms at an aggressive pace, whether that remains in place, I think will have a lot to do with whether she survives and whether she is there for 30 years like Dick Brown was.
Well, that makes an excellent transition, of course, going into tonight's debate, where we're going to see the mayor of our fair city, Bill de Blasio, on stage debating with Elizabeth Warren and, of course, Cory Booker from our neighboring state, New Jersey. So what is it that we can expect, or we should hope to see from Mayor de Blasio tonight?
I think what he hopes to see is not making any mistakes, because that's what really echoes from a debate. Most people won't watch it. Those who do won't remember it in a few months' time. But if you screw up, that's what we'll get sound clipped, sound bited, and broadcast ad nauseum for day after day and totally torpedo your career. De Blasio generally is a pretty careful debater. He's not like a stellar debater, but he rarely makes mistakes, very disciplined. For the most part, in the debates that we've seen as he's been a candidate for mayor in 2013 and 17, he's been debating from the lead, playing defense. He won't have that opportunity tonight. It's a much bigger stage, and he's a minor candidate in the race, but I think he'll try to make a few kind of clear points, try to distinguish himself somehow from the other candidates on the stage.
He's going to be well prepared. Being mayor prepares you for moments like this quite a bit. He faces these press conferences all the time. He's obviously debated in his elections, and he is very disciplined, as Jarrett said. So I'd expect to hear some talking points from him, and he's probably going to be a little bit more prepared in terms of policy proposals that he either supports or wants to float out there. And we know he's been going around the country talking about this line about there's plenty of money in the world, there's plenty of money in the country, it's in the wrong hands. Expect to hear that at least once, if not multiple times. But like he went around the city talking about pre-K in his first mayoral race, he knows how to hit the notes that he wants to get home to voters. So I'd expect him to do that. And then also, even though Joe Biden is not going to be on the stage, the former vice president, de Blasio's been going after him a little bit, and I would expect at least once or twice for him to try to make some waves by going after Biden again.
All right. Well, it's definitely something for us to chew on while we wait for the next election for everybody to vote in. So, gentlemen, I want to thank you both for joining me again on the program.
Thank you.
Thanks.